اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وسلم وبارك وسلم. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رحمة للعالمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أنبياء المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to each and every one. Welcome to our Shaykh Seraj. I'm going to hand over to Shaykh Salam to do the welcoming and to do the necessary introduction to the speakers.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd first like to ask Shaykh to make an opening dua. Al-Fatiha.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. رب اغفر لنا ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد.
دعوانك يا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك يا سلام. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.
الحمد لله منشي الخلق من عدم ثم الصلاة على المختار في القدام. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. يا أكرم الخلق ما لي من ألوذ به سواك عند الحلول الحديث العمام. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. هو الحبيب الذي ترجى شفاعته لكل هول من الأهوال مقتحم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. ثم الرضا عن أبي بكر وعن عمر وعن عثمان وعن علي ذي الكرم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك كلهم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي جمعا طلبنا منك مغفرة وحسن الخاتمة يا واسع الكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فاغفر لي ناشدي واغفر لقارئها سألتك الخير يا ذا الجود والكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله.
ما شاء الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد عدد ما في علم الله صلاة دائمة بدوام ملك الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I'm standing here and I'm looking at everyone, and one of the things that comes to mind is something that our grandparents and forefathers always used to say, or say now in particular, is that we live in a time now where our houses are perhaps much, much bigger than what they were historically in the past, but our homes, our hearts have become much smaller. So in that spirit, I see this standing room only. I'd like to say we can accept a lot more people, even though, you know, physically, we may be quite big. Our hearts, alhamdulillah, can accommodate a lot more people, all of our hearts. So welcome to each and every one of you on behalf of Timbuktu Books and on behalf of Shaykh Ali Khalfe. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. In particular, part of our culture is also to honor those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored. I would, in that spirit, like to especially extend a very, very warm welcome to Shaykh Seraj Hendricks of the Azawiya Institute, as well as the various shuyukh, as well as Judge Bashir Wagley and the Khalfe families. As part of Timbuktu Books, I think we are, or Timbuktu Books in fact, is extremely honored to be a small part of this occasion. For us, and I'm sure for many of you, it is quite apparent that we live in a time of where the honor and status of human beings in general is being assaulted from a whole host of angles. Spiritual, moral, and other forms of degradation is severely assaulting the honor and status of human beings. So, as part of this wonderful project to, in a sense, resurrect, reinvigorate the honor and status of human beings, as I said, we are extremely delighted to be part of this venture, and we congratulate Shaykh Ali Khalfe, as well as all of those who in various ways have brought the book to the stage that it is at now. And I would also encourage you in the spirit of enjoying what is good and forbidding what is wrong, to enjoying what is good, and to support this noble venture of our dear brother, Shaykh Khalfe. I think also I'd like to just mention that it is said that there are two people who will never ever get enough, will never ever be satisfied. The first one is the one who is trying to pursue the dunya. When he has 100, he says, can I have another zero? And it becomes 1,000. And when it's 1,000, he asks, can I have another zero? So there can be 10,000. And when he's got 10,000, he asks, can I have, please, or can I have another zero? So there can be 100,000. And so on. He's never ever satisfied. And then there's the other one. The other one is the seek of knowledge. Shaykh Ali Khalfe is one of those. He is a seeker of knowledge, and mashallah, I think he's more in the shop than I am. He's more in the shop than I am. And probably Fatima as well, and hopefully not Umar, but he's definitely, he's extremely hungry and voraciously seeking knowledge. But not just knowledge, I think, in a time that we're living of Sheikh Google, as they call it, Sheikh Google, where you can seemingly get all these answers that you want at the click of a button. We are not only in need of knowledge, we are desperately in need of wisdom. But a wisdom that is tied firmly and resolutely to a prophetic chain, an unbroken prophetic chain. Because we need that, if I may take some poetic license, Siraja Munira. We need to take from that illuminating light from the Prophet ﷺ, so that we may spread this wisdom. And for us, as I said, as Timbuktu Books, we are delighted to be part of this project. And thank you so much for allowing us, Shaykh Ali Khalfe, to be part of this project. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Can I ask our other respected guest, Judge Wagley, to please come forward, inshallah.
Jazakallah shukran, Muhammad Salih. It is my task to be the MC at this function here today, and I don't know if I can do justice to that. It's okay if you have either the teacher or the student, but to have the teacher and student and give a synopsis or a brief synopsis about that is a bit of a difficult task. When we organized this event, Muhammad Ali came to me and said, this is the way I would like to have the advertisement via the internet and via the post. I want to have it done this way. I had it done. He came back to me and he said to me, it's okay, but you left out Shaykh Seraj. Why did you do that? I said, let's go back to the drawing board. And then we added Shaykh Seraj, and he came back to me and he said to me, it's still not, but eventually we managed to get the advert the way we wanted to have the advert advertised. I know Shaykh Ali Khalfe from Timbuktu Books. The first time when I met him, he asked me for a few titles, and I was completely baffled because I was new in the book business and I didn't really exactly know where he's coming from. And as time went on, I've learned to know who this person really is. I've never seen somebody that has a love for knowledge, but I've never really met somebody who has a love for his teacher or teachers, namely Shaykh Ahmad and Shaykh Siraj. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand over to you to Shaykh Ali Khalfe, and he's going to do a more introduction to his book, inshallah. Jazakallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Firstly, from my side, my family, we thank everybody for attending this book launch, for taking the time out of your Saturday to join us here with the launch of this book. To my parents, to my sisters, my brothers, my friends, to the Sheikhs, to Judge Bashir, to Shaykh Seraj, to Timbuktu Books. It is an honor and a privilege for me to be part of launching a book at this bookstore. Secondly, I would like to extend a thank you to Muhammad Salih and let Muhammad Salih know that every one of us here acknowledges and appreciates the effort put into this bookshop. I often hear on radios and sayings that it's the youth. But this is an opportunity for us as adults to bring these works into our homes, to support this bookshop as we should be doing, so we can educate ourselves and leave things in our homes for our youth to read. It doesn't start with them, it starts with us to make that difference. And I think and I feel that we should make an effort to really support this bookshop, to make it survive, to make it extend, to branch out, so that it can spread from Cape Town even further, inshallah. Thirdly, I'll just touch on a bit of where the book comes from, and before I hand over to Shaykh Seraj. This book is a summary of a series of lectures given in 2006. 6 years ago, Shaykh. It's quite a while back, eh? 6 years ago. 6 years ago, 2006, every Friday, every second Friday, Jumu'ah, which ran until the end of 2007, plus minus 2 years. The work Shaykh Seraj lectured on or read from was a work on international relations called the Alaqat Dawliya of Shaykh Imam Abu Zahra. What I did was I documented each lecture and I kind of fell in love with the work. I then got a copy of the book. I went according to the chapters in the work, more or less, and I added Shaykh Seraj's commentary. So you'll notice in the book, Shaykh Seraj mentioned this Jumu'ah in 2006 in this month. I then, in addition to that, added my own commentaries, if that's okay. Too late.
It's better than mine. It's better than mine.
So I added my own commentaries to the work. What I did further was I looked at the Quranic ayat verses which Abu Zahra used in his work, and I used commentaries from the earliest generations to the latter generations and expanded on the meanings of those ayat, those verses, from the likes of Ibn Abbas to Imam Ghazali to Sayyid Muhammad Ibn Alawi al-Maliki, from the first generation right now. In addition to that, I added some of the wisdoms of the Sufis to the work. Why? I'll get back to that in a minute as to why I added the wisdoms of the words in each chapter. There's a commonality or something we can all come to a common grounds with every chapter, is that there is something, for example, that we have common roots, that tolerance is important, that forgiveness, mercy, compassion, that backbiting is bad, that arrogance is evil, that patience is important, and thankfulness is important. And these are all the chapters in the work, and that's a common ground regardless of belief, being Muslim, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu. we can all come to a common ground that these are important values that we need in our society, in our lives. As for the Sufi perspectives, for example, one of the chapters is called Common Roots, and we are taught from an Islamic perspective that, from the Quran, that we are all from Adam, and Adam is from clay, from dust. Two of the Sufi commentaries in the work include Jalaluddin Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, and Ibn Arabi, where Rumi would say on the dust, for example, he quotes in his poetry that speaking to Shaitan, to the devil, refusing to prostrate, to bow down to Adam, he says, "You fool, you see a pot of clay and dust here, but if you look carefully and look through the clay, you would witness 100,000 rose gardens in you." So we find this beauty and this wisdom in the Sufi literature. And there we see the fall of Shaitan, being the cursed, being arrogant, seeing with one eye, being very literal. I've also added commentaries of Ibn Arabi in the work, where he says on dust that if dust is your origin, then that were taught, and that was Islam. Forgiveness, being patient, being thankful, not showing off, being humble, being a merciful person. And this is what I feel, what I believe, or what the Sufis call Islam. And therefore they stand as the inheritors of the prophetic message in this way. Because at the forefront, they not impose, but they bring this to the forefront. These qualities of internalizing or cleansing the inside, and then working that and letting that pour and flow over to the outside. And that is based on nothing else but the text of the Quran, where Allah says that you will never ever change the outside or the outer, the societies, unless you change and master what is inside. These are the chapters in the works. This is the point of departure. It is from the text of the Quran, from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, from the narrations of the companions and of the Sufis. That's basically a summary and the path I went in compiling this work. So again, from me, shukran everybody for attending, from taking your Saturday out to attend this book launch. Now, hand over to Shaykh Seraj. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. Did I hear something say this? No, I'm not going to take that chance.
Okay, I'll take the chance. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Shukran, Muhammad Ali, for the opportunity to sit with you and to discuss with the audience the importance of this particular work. I do feel honored, with the acknowledgements, and that most of this is yours, so don't worry. That's some of my comments are just sort of beacons along the way, nothing more than that. But it's a work that is very important, both in its concept and its significance for both Muslims and non-Muslims. And one of the biggest challenges, of course, that faces any Muslim society, and has always been facing Muslim societies, and that is its challenge of universalism in Islam. It's the lastly and finally revealed religion, Deen of Allah Ta'ala, and it's preceded by a host of prophets and sages, all sorts of wise people who try to give humanity some kind of direction for as long as we are creatures existing here on this planet. But as Muslims, we have the honor of having the revelation sealed in the form of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But that sealing is paradoxically an opening. It's not, what we've done sort of subconsciously is to mistake the sealing for the complete ghettoizing of Islam, instead of a sealing that tells us, look, this is a seal for humanity, that this is the final statement on revelation as such. In fact, the first Muslims were not quite clear as to what the word Islam meant, what the word Muslim meant, what the word fiqh meant. These terms are developed later on. Any development within any society requires specialization, branch off, and then categorization, and in order for people as knowledge accumulates. So when the Prophet used the word fiqh, he didn't mean fiqh in the legal sense that we use it now. But we live in post-colonial times, and one of the problems is that we are still very much victims of those times. And have lost the confidence, I think, that our earlier Muslims have espoused, had. All we need to do, and I'm not going to really extend on these things, all we need to do is to take a journey across with the first Muslims into India, for example. They landed on the Malabar coast and fully integrated the societies, adopted their dress and everything. They were so welcomed by the Hindus at the time that they were allowed in courts of law, they were allowed in masajid, they were allowed to live in peace, because they did not come there as belligerents. They did not come there as people with a superiority complex. They came there as humble people. They came there and arrived there as Ibadur Rahman, as a true Ibadur Rahman. Those people walk on this earth with humility. And with humility, they won over the half of the population until to the point where Islam became ascendant deen for hundreds of years within that glorious civilization. The same thing happened further on in China, for example. To the west, the same thing happened also. Turkey, for example, the Hittites. These are ancient civilizations, Mesopotamia, the Hittites, and so on. And then further across to Spain, America was kind of unknown, off the radar. Europe was sort of running around in skins and all sorts of things. When the Muslims moved into India, for example, they came across a very sophisticated mathematical system. The ones and twos that we see in Arabic now today are not Arabic numerals. They are Indian numerals. But they weren't stand people who were of the minds and understood, wow, this is bid'ah, we will reinvent the number. So what they did was they embraced the number and they improved the maths. To the point where we have people like Al-Khwarizmi, after whom algorithms is in fact named. We have algebra, after whom algebra is named. And if you look at the stars and the planets up in the sky at night, about 50% of them are Arabic and Muslim names. This is what they did. And the original script of the Arabs, of Muslims, was the Western Cyrillic, which was found in Spain, which is the numbers that we look at now: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And all of these things were embraced by each and everyone, across Europe, across Indians, Hindus, in that culture, China, everyone. They worked together, the Greeks, the Muslims, and everyone. They embraced cosmopolitanism. Maimonides graduated out of a Spanish university, and he was one of the greatest students of even Islamic law, etc., etc. These are people who understood the value of knowledge, and that knowledge as such is not the preserve of a particular group of people. I was just in my very good friend of Rahim Murad last night, speaking at the Fez Summit, where he says, we people, we talk so much, we are so fic-centric. And in Cape Town also we are very fic-centric, us, haram and halal, etc. Okay. We're kind of obsessed with these ideas. But anyone can learn fiqh. It's a subject. You can learn law, it's different the format, it's different law. But anyone can. A non-Muslim can learn it better than what I can and specialize in. This is the truth. I can teach you all the ahkam, the hayat, the wajibat, the arkan, the sunnahs of the salah. But anyone else can do that if they have learned it, Muslim or non-Muslim. And I mean, what I mean non-Muslim, I mean atheist and anyone. But can they salah? You know, when it comes to, when the Prophet said, as-salat mi'raj al-mu'min, for example, that's the essence of the deen of salah. As-salatu imadu deen, it's the foundation of our deen. In addition, as-salat is the mi'raj al-mu'min. And that mi'raj, that's a spiritual ascension that we need to experience when we are in that salah. A person who has not embraced the values of Islam, who has not connected with the spirituality of Islam, can never experience that, although they can know all the ahkam. Imam Ghazali is quite brutal about his Kitab al-Ilm, which I'm doing on Tuesday nights now with the students, where he says, anyone who thinks that the transactions and these things, and the commercial law and all of those things will bring you closer to heaven, anyone who thinks that is mad. Law is law. Any society needs a law to govern them. And then he speaks about the fact that because it is the shahawat of people, we are driven predominantly by our shahawat and not by adala. Therefore we need, it's imperative that any society requires a law. And then he goes into some discussion as to which is superior, law or medicine, but that's kind of peripheral discussion. The fact of the matter is that societies need law because of that instability, that greed, that covetousness that is there. And we cannot allow one person's avarice to oppress and dominate another. Right? But imbibing the virtues of these things, for you to see 10,000 land on the floor there and you pass it, that temptation now to pick it up. And this I found amazing in Makkah in the 11 years we were there. Money would lie there and no one would pick it up. We should become self-governing individuals. That is what we ought to become. If you go into many European states, Germany and all these places, Britain, the works, you find that people have far more internalized these virtues than what we as Muslims have. That self-governing, That is the ideal of Islamic law. It is to engender within ourselves a sense of self-governance. That I, as myself, therefore I am mukallaf. And that I will do and act as someone who is mukallaf. And with two consequences in mind. In Islam there are two forms and types of hukum. One is hukum al-diyana and the other one is hukum al-qada. What you as a judge or a lawyer does in a court of law is what we call hukum al-qada. Like our judge, regularly here. You are exposed to the evidence, the arguments, and based on those arguments and the evidence and everything that are produced, you have to make a judgment call. But then you can make a mistake. We can all make mistakes. Is it not so? I mean, the records of judges and lawyers and everyone making mistakes. That is purely human. In Islam, on the other hand, we have a hukum diyana. And that is the hukum of the akhirah. On the final day, Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's why we call it Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's a day in which Allah will judge you. And none of what you have done will be dismissed or overlooked. So as Muslims, basically what that tells us, that dichotomy of hukm al-diyan and hukm al-qada, is that as Muslims, even in the court of law, we need to be honest. Because if you are honest, there are things that mitigate your punishment and stuff like that. If you confess immediately, there will be, it is universal. You'll be absolved of it, or the judgment will be lesser than when you lied and when it's covered, etc., etc. This is human. This works throughout every system. But as Muslims, we need to become self-governing individuals with the discipline of spirituality and taqwa, which is the consciousness of the hereafter. That is the way in which we as Muslims ought to behave. And this is the most difficult part, people. We can speak and philosophize about hundreds of things. The topics here are lovely. I mean, I enjoy each one of them. The importance of seeking knowledge, which is very important, to start off with the work, and then to discuss the status of the human being, the common roots of people created in the best of molds, etc., etc., the value of a single life, Mercy and compassion, freedom of religion, another tricky one. The non-Muslim, if they're a human being or not, and that's the way it goes on. Moral excellence, al-fadila, karamat al-insaniya, and all of these things. People, if we cannot embrace these values of Islam, then no amount of fiqh is going to help us. This is a fact. And it's a fact that really hits you in the face when you live for years within a country that is ostensibly a Muslim, where the laws are being applied. Because if you walk into the jails, you will walk and you'll find people sitting like me in jail with these clothes on. You'll find people sitting in the Pakistani clothes, Afghan clothes, Indian clothes. You'll find them all across, and you get a culture shock. This is doing your practice, You have to go around and see how places look and stuff like that. And then you wonder, our association with the way we dress is with religiosity and salah. And then you walk into a prison filled with people who are dressed like that. It's a mind-blowing experience. And you're forced to ask yourself, does Islam really reside in those tawaqis, those external expressions of what we imagine to define our Muslimness? This is very important, people. It's not that we should turn our backs. I'm still not contradicting myself. I still wear it because I love it. The Prophet wore it and stuff like that, that sort of thing. But it does not define you. And it does not make you a Muslim. And that I think is one of the most important things. Now what I'll do with you later, I'm going to read a text to you, a quote one, and I will ask you to date that. One of the nice sort of, when I was doing majoring in English, a nice test was that you could blank verses and blank stuff and, of books and stuff like that. And they'd ask you, in fact, to try to locate that in time. Is it a 16th century piece, a 19th century piece, a 20th century piece? It's quite fascinating. They do this in overseas in Saudi Arabia also. They take the fasir, they quote from you, and they would ask you to identify. It's quite amazing. Fakhr ibn Razi, the great Tafsir al-Kabir, his work was one of the works called, unfortunately I knew that work, because Shaykh Mahir taught that work all his life. And 90% of the people who phoned in to the radio station to identify and to periodize it said that he was a man from the 20th century. That's so amazing, how the idiom and how he thought. Now I'm going to read some, I'll just ask you, no pressure on you people, just lightly, try to identify this, that which I will write, I will quote to you. The important thing, people, is that when you look at education and knowledge, educations are generally agreed, and I just wrote this down really quickly, that the aim of education is a question that admits no answer without a reference to ultimate convictions about human nature and about human destiny, about society and how the individual stands in relation to it. That's the importance of education. What have you learned? What have I learned from my life? And how has the learning that I have embraced throughout the course of my life affected my convictions and my understanding and judgment of other people? How has it happened? What has it done to me? Has it turned me into a bigoted monster who just, rejects all forms of kufr that we might have in our minds? What am I? Has it resulted in a bleeding outlook on life? Or has it liberated me? Has it opened my mind up in a sense that I believe Allah Ta'ala in all His infinity would like to do so? What do we understand, for example? How do I understand? And I mentioned this again in Jummah, was Friday? I don't know, I'm not sure. The Quran is the perfect word of Allah Ta'ala, but is it the complete word? Allah Ta'ala tells us the perfect word of Allah Ta'ala, but it doesn't tell us it's the complete word. Now, is that blasphemous for me to say so? It's not. Because Allah Ta'ala Himself says so in the Quran. And that ayah is one of the most inspiring ayahs where I'm concerned when it comes to the time that I invest in learning and in knowledge. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا. Had the ocean been ink, for my words, the kalimat of my words, then the ocean would be exhausted before my word can ever be exhausted. Good God, it takes about just a pot of ink to write the entire Quran. Does it not so? But then it adds to that and it says, even if you come to the light of the ocean, that word of Allah Ta'ala is infinite. It cannot be completed. It cannot be completed between the pages of the book. What does it tell us? What does it tell us? Our predecessors, like Ghazali, looked at the Raya, Ibn Arabi, for example. In fact, my brother Shahman made a good point the other day and wondered, what if people, civilizations, countries, communities, societies, we foreground certain people, don't we, in our progress? For centuries, the Muslims have not foregrounded Ibn Arabi, for example, in the daily discourse, the daily discussions. How many of us really know about Ibn Arabi? We've been told, don't read him, he's kufr, it's going to send you back to some other misleading. The same was attempted with Ibn Ghazali. We tried to marginalize him. A lot of them, Sayyid Baghdadi, Sariya Saqati, Bahauddin al-Naqshbandi, a whole lot of them, Imam al-Shadri. What would have happened to our societies today, and I mean particularly in Arabi, if we had foregrounded these scholars and these thinkers and these mystics in our daily lives, we would have had a different society. Far more open, far more tolerant, far more in line, I believe, with the spirit, with the universal spirit of Islam. At the end of the day, people, I'm not going to talk too long here because I would like to finish up those two quotations that I'd like to read to you. But as Muslims, we've got to realize that fundamentally we are governed by spiritual and ethical values. We need to hold on, of course, to the forms. We need the forms in order to show us how to salah. We need the forms in order to siyam, to perform our hajj. But do not mistake the forms for the essence. And that is one of the most ridiculous mistakes we can make. I was sitting my very first day on hajj and on Mina, and when they made dua, I was very uncomfortable on the floor at the time, and I turned myself out. I was 21, 22 at the time, and I turned off when we first went over. I turned myself outside of the Qibla, and one of the older people almost smacked me back into my Qibla, I had to parry on Mina, and he tells me, sit in the Kaaba, sit in the Kaaba. You don't need to sit in the Kaaba when you are performing your dua, and particularly on the soil, on the ground like that, little stones. And my word, I'm a youngster, an old man, and you're using violence after the, to get me to. What are you doing here, man? Come on Hajj, Well, what have you learned? For example, La rafat wa la fusuqa fil Hajj. It's unbelievable, So maybe Allah grant him some hidayah. I don't know whether he might be dead because he's much older man. But that's the sort of thing that you encounter. I've encountered the ridiculous things on the Hajj. I've hajjed more than one. It's absolutely bizarre things. Then you wonder, what are you doing here, brother? Please. It's females also. It's not just males. Come on, we're not going to patronize here. Females can be nasty on the Hajj. So we're not exempting them at all. Come on. Anyway, what we have to realize is that Muslims are governed by spiritual and ethical values, and which find the expression in the divine forms. Or what we need to do is recognize these as divine forms. The way you perform our salah and the way we perform this, that, and the other. And that there are a few principles attached to our notions of tawheed, not of aqidah, how we believe about Allah Ta'ala. And that is that we believe that Allah Ta'ala is one, and that He is infinitely merciful, and we need to understand what we mean by merciful, that He is just and that He is forgiving. Justice is the third most mentioned word in the Quran, people, after the word Allah Ta'ala and after the word ilm, knowledge, and all its mutaradifat and all its synonyms. Justice is the third most mentioned word in the Quran. That clearly tells, Allah doesn't waste and mince His words. So that tells us a lot about that. And that, secondly, we need to live in harmony with nature, with people around ourselves also, within ourselves and with other people. Islam is the natural way. It's a deen of the fitrah. and it's built on that. And thirdly, we need to see that both male and female understand that we are part material and that we are part spiritual. In other words, that we are theomorphic beings. Theo means spiritual and morphic, meaning bodily. And as theomorphic beings, we are both the Abd of Allah Ta'ala and Khalifatullah. And this is often the mistake we do. If you embrace the idea of Khalifatullah, that you are a ruler on the earth, that you've got a taskhir, your work in this, you can become a tyrant without understanding the ubudiyah, that you're also the servant of Allah Ta'ala. We need a balance of that. That you need to understand that you're an Abd of Allah Ta'ala and that you're also, that you are, while Allah Ta'ala has placed us all as khulafa, men and women, on earth, we've got to understand and cannot lose sight of the fact that we're also the Ibad Rahman, we're also the Abd of Allah Ta'ala. And in that balance we will find ourselves, in a productive relationship with our fellow human beings. And that as Khalifa and as Khalifa in particular, we have been granted almost limitless power of taskhir on this earth, and therefore we have to be so careful about how we exploit things in the natural world, and how we go about exploiting these things, and that we enjoin things that are good and we forbid things that are evil, in line with what our brother Muhammad said early on, and that our worldview ultimately is a theocentric one and not an anthropocentric one. Anthropocentric means that it's focused, the human being forms the essence of things, the most important unit of creation, to the exclusion of Allah. Theocentric means that the divine, the sacred, forms the axis around which we organize our affairs. These are some of the values, people, that we need to internalize, I think that we need to imbibe in the process of trying to understand and coming to terms with our understanding of ourselves, in terms of understanding what we mean by the status and honor of being a human. And that goes across the board, Muslim and non-Muslim. لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. All Mufassirin are agreed that that includes Muslims and non-Muslims. From this the work, I just quote three passages from this, and one I would like to shock you with. The first one is, says Abu Zahra. This is in Khalas, when he sums up the entire work. He says, number one, what we as Muslims, the goals that we need to set ourselves as Muslims, and all of us, what we need to set ourselves, number one, is iqamatul adala bayna al-muslimin wa ghayrihim. That we need to establish justice, not just amongst ourselves as Muslims, but amongst everyone else. We need to be the examples and the representatives of justice ultimately, to everyone, not just to ourselves as Muslims, and male and female. وتثيق العلاقات الأدبية وتحقيق التعارف والتعاون الإنسانية, and to strengthen those bonds through adab, through good behavior and through good manners. Adab is very important. It's pointless spitting and shouting in people's faces when they try to go Bible thumping on the parade. These methods don't work. We do that through adab. Adab being a refined character. Another beautiful translation of adab is quite simply the ability to do things the right way. Okay, I like that definition. And وَتَعَاوُنُ الْإِنسَانِيَّةِ, and to assist other people. I mean, how many missionaries are there not in Africa? They're not even half as successful as Muslims, despite our limitations, going up into Africa to help people, assist people, medical personnel, all sorts, business people, going up. And we need to be at the forefront of that kind of ta'awun. And that is all in the spirit of adala, of doing justice to our fellow human beings. Secondly, man'u muslimin min an ta'adu ala ghayrihim. This is Abu Zahra saying, to forcibly prevent Muslims from transgressing on the rights of other people, other religions and other people. That it is our duty as Muslims to prevent that, and not to stand by and say, that's a kafir being knocked around and being frauded or whatever the case. It doesn't work like that. If you're in debt with a non-Muslim and you cannot go on Hajj, that's the consensus of scholars. You cannot go on Hajj. You're doing an injustice to them, and you've got to pay him first. And people go on like, we had a Dinazabia on the corner, I don't know if some of you saw for a while. It's a Portuguese man with a board on a Volkswagen, those the Volkswagens, the big ones. Yeah, but then we had a notice on the man saying that he owes me 10,000 rand, but he wants to go on Hajj. And I phoned the man, as a Portuguese person, I spoke to him, and then he said that he's a student of ours. I asked his name, I didn't even know the man's name, he was just looking for cover. I mean, this sort of disgrace, but he wanted to go on Hajj. You can't. And I phoned the family and I said, he can't. He's got, but he's Kafir and he's this. Oh my God. This culture destroys and wrecks the image of Islam, people. So you're transgressing and we're not allowed to do that. Now, as Abu Zahra says, Islam Islam prohibits all forms of aggression, no matter what shape it takes and what kind of aggression it is. Now, and thirdly, it says, حماية الحريات لغير المسلمين. It is our duty to defend the freedoms of non-Muslims. Do we do that? It is our duty as Muslims to defend the freedoms of other people. La ikraha fi din. It's probably one of the first. There was a lady, a Kuwaiti lady, who did a phenomenal PhD on the role of women in Islam, in fact. And she makes a statement very powerful. I haven't been able to subvert that, even after reading it for a few years, claiming that the Quran is the first document ever to make that statement. That there is no document, whether it's Code of Hammurabi, before that and others, that has ever made this statement granting freedom of religion, freedom of belief, freedom of thought to other communities. La ikraha fi din. This is what she states in a PhD. And I mean, that is our Torah, that is our possession. That there is no compulsion in religion. It's haram. وخصوصا, says Abu Zahra, حرية العقيدة. Particularly when it comes to the system of belief. How can you? What sort of belief can you engender in a person? If you by the sword kind of thing. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot to say there, people, but let me just quote this last piece to you. And try to tell me if you think this is a modern scholar or not, or whether he's sort of a bit of it's completely misread Islam. He says, وَإِذَا إِنْتَلَكَ أَحَدُهُمْ دَارًا فَلَهُ حُقُوقُ الْمُسْلِمِ في بنائه من الارتفاع وغيره. He says if the non-Muslim takes possession of a property, buys it, فَلَهُ حُقُوقَ الْمُسْلِمِ, then he enjoys the identical rights as a Muslim would if he or she has bought a property, a house. في بنائه, in terms of how you build it, the structure and way and the style of the house. وَإِنْ كَانُوا فِي بَلَدٍ, and if it is in a country, يَمْلِكُونَهَا, and if it is this house, the house that they build, if it is in a country which is under the control of Muslims, لَا يَمْنَعُهُمْ مِنْ إِحْدَاثِ الْكَنَائِسِ, then we have no right to prevent them from building their churches. وَلَا تَرَفُعُ الْبِنَاءِ, and to prevent them from building whatever buildings for commercial purpose and business purposes and stuff like that. وَلَا نُعَرِّضْ لَهُمْ فِي خَنَازِرِهِمْ, and we cannot prohibit them from farming their pigs and selling their pigs and eating their pigs. وَخَمْرِهِمْ, and their wine. وَأَعْيَادِهِمْ, and their festivities like Christmas and all these things. It is haram for Muslims to do all of these things. وَجَمَاعَاتِهِمْ, and the gatherings, the public gatherings. It's haram for us to do that even if they are living non-Muslims in a Muslim state, for example, whatever we define as a Muslim state, but under Muslim control. I mean, how long ago do you think this was said? How long would one assume? 500 years ago, 200 years ago, 300, post-colonial, pre-colonial? How long would we, somebody who said that? That is none other than Imam Shafi who said that at that time already. And if I quoted this once in public and someone got up and accused me of kufr, and this is in the of Imam Shafi, just 300 years after the death of the Prophet. Now, when you sort of, compare these things, it is incredible. What inspired these people, and why are there these obscene differences in terms of how we deal with the other? We've otherized other people to the extent where we have dehumanized them. These are the questions, I think, that we need to confront and vigorously confront. I'm delivering a talk at IPSA as the keynote speaker on the middle way Islam and the middle way Islam, and I'll be integrating quite a bit of these things, at that particular sort of kind of more academic paper kind of thing. But inshallah, these are some of the ideas that I will be exploring in greater depth. And with that in mind, I would encourage each one of you, because this is what Ali Khalfe does in his compilation, his documentation of the best, I think, of what has been thought, felt, and done within the Muslim, as long as our history has been in existence. It is with those ideas, I think, coming from my side, that I would recommend each one of you in its discussions on justice, brotherhood, sisterhood, and everything else that goes into making, I think, a sublime Muslim character based and founded within the blessings of the Quran and the Sunnah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that we can benefit from this book, inshallah ta'ala. And sorry for taking up so much of your time, Omar. You're going to throw me with a tomato. But I'll make up to you, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. I'm sorry for taking up too much of your time, wasted the time, but I hope that we've benefited, inshallah ta'ala. And anything, questions, please ask if you wish to. Okay, barakallah fiik. Sorry, Omar. I nearly got to panic. It would have been an achievement.
Not at all. I was asked to give an introduction to Shaykh Seraj, or about Shaykh Seraj. Where do I start? And I thought I'm going to leave it for the Shaykh first to speak, and then afterwards everybody can then decide what type of introduction they gauge from there. Shaykh has always been an institution with Timbuktu books. I saw you about 2 days ago, and yeah, you left me with a treasure trove of knowledge once more. So I don't think, even if I had to start and give all your academic credentials, I could have done justice to that. So I left it deliberately till after your speech, and everybody then can decide how they wanted to introduce themselves to you as a teacher, not only for knowledge but the wisdom that I get from you whenever you walk into the bookstore or whenever we bump into each other. There's never a moment that Shaykh does not leave me with something to ponder about, and particularly about the classical scholars, Ibn Arabi, Fakhruddin Razi, Imam Ghazali in particular. When I speak to Ali Khalfe, he would constantly remind me that the adab of the great sheikhs in town, the adab of the great sheikhs in Warm Estate, the adab of the great sheikh, if that is the love that the student have for the teacher, I would really like to see the love the teacher have for the student then. I'm going to open up for approximately 5 minutes only, because it seems to me the aircon in the building is not functioning properly, and we're sitting in a bit of a pressure cooker here in Timbuktu. If there's any questions, I'm going to take it hand by hand. And please do not come up with the most difficult questions, because I'm going to then ask you to make an appointment with Shaykh Ali Khalfe and Shaykh Seraj then. Any questions? It doesn't look like there's questions. Thank you. Well, I just have one question. The inspiration behind the book, Shaykh Ali Khalfe, what was, because I reviewed the book, and it's basically just classical scholars from page 1 till page 417. Just classical scholars. How did you translate all that Arabic works, and how long did it take you?
Page 411.
411. Sorry, I've got about 6 pages.
Not bad.
In my book, I've got 470.
Is it? I better have a secret knowledge. Okay.
The compilation took a few years. It doesn't just happen. overnight, over a week, over a month. Also because of working in the week, I work as a software tester as well in the IT industry. So the studies are in the evening, and when time allows, I added section, added a chapter. Till I felt it was good. I mean, I sent reviews over and over. I don't know if you read any of the emails, but I sent it to you as I went along. I think with any author or any compiler, as a compiler, I followed the tradition where, for example, Imam Kushairi, if you read his Risala written about 1,000 years ago, he documented what each of his teachers said about their teachers, about their teachers, and about their teachers. So I scratched around and researched and opened up, turned over every book I could find which commented on the verses and on the topics in Abu Zahra's Al-Qaduliyah. And from there I added the commentary of Shaykh Seraj of myself, and I think that's how it went. But it took quite, I did it over maybe 1.5 years. That's the path and the walk that we went through with it. I think you want to announce that there's snacks also for everybody.
Leave that to me. Leave that to me. You concern yourself to the book.
The author has organized some snacks. He asked me to announce that he's going to sign books. First of all, a vote of thanks.
He's got a bad signature.
Says Shiraz, shukran, as always. Sheikh Ali Khalfe, for all your hard work, for all your inspiration, and for the times that we spent together in various other subject matters. Thank you for that. I want to say thank you to Judge Wagley for your presence. I want to say thank you to Sheikh Hussain, to Sidi Wahid for the dua. I want to say thank you to everybody who has made it the special effort to come out to our bookstore today. The book is on sale at the counter in front, or at the back or in front of the store. Sidi Ali Khalfe has made special snacks, and his family has made snacks available. He would want each and everybody to partake in that. Is there anything else I should know? Everything covered? So I'm going to ask Shaykh Seraj then to do the closing dua for us, inshallah. And then once again, thank you to each and everybody who has made the way to Timbuktu Books to attend this event. Shukran Jazak.
Just before I make the dua, I hope is a way to handle some text sort of on Facebook and stuff like that. Yeah. One of the things is like, particularly issues of Ridda and stuff like that, there are certain controversial, apparently quasi-controversial topics here. Try to engage the issues with regard to Ridda, with regard to this, and find questions at him, and, to make it dynamic in turn. I think we all learn from that. And that's why I learned so much from them. They keep on saying they learn from me, I learn more from them. He is faced with asking questions in class, and then Fan and a number of others sitting here, and Mariam, a lot of you here. I learned so much from it, and throw difficult questions at people, because these are things that the kinds of debates I think we need to engage. Our community, we are way beyond that point of holding back on those things, and sort of dealing with them with kid gloves kind of thing, brushing them under the carpet. It doesn't work. Islam, I think, is far greater and far bigger than what we can ever be. And Allah Ta'ala's knowledge is far more infinite than we could ever even imagine. So I think, if you don't mind, I think people need to engage also actively and through those channels with some of the ideas. I'll contribute if I can, everybody. Inshallah Ta'ala. Okay, we'll make dua, inshallah Ta'ala. Shukran again to Timbuktu and to everyone else, Muhammad Salih, our friends, Umar, please, you are wonderful people, alhamdulillah. We are blessed to have you around, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا مولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا زدنا علما وارزقنا فهما ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك الرحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا حاجة إلا قضيته ويسرتها فيسر أمورنا واشرح صدورنا ونور قلوبنا واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا. اللهم أحينا مسلمين وأمتنا مسلمين والحقنا بالصالحين غير خزايا ولا مفتونين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. Let's read all together, people. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم بفضلك دعوة فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحية فيها سلام وآخر دعوة الحمد لله رب العالمين. بارك الله فيكم. شكرا.